Our house used to be a home, a place where laughter and love always echoed. But after one phone call, reporting my brother's disappearance in an accident, it turned into a graveyard where each person buried their own sorrow. It wasn't until I accidentally found a vial of pills and my mother's plan for a cruel resurrection that I discovered the horrific truth about the accident from that year. After tiring hours of work, all I wanted was to quickly return to my loving home. Every dinner, the family gathered around the table. The clinking of cutlery blended with our lively chatter, and the aroma of roasted chicken lingered throughout the space. Mom asked questions, Dad told stories, and Ben, my brother, always interjected with a few jokes that made the whole family double over with laughter. I used to think that laughter would echo forever, but the real nightmare came on a rainy night, when the sharp ring of the phone tore through the darkness and our entire world. The police reported Ben had an accident, his vehicle, and he had fallen into the river and gone missing. Dad rushed out to the garage, each raindrop lashing against the car window like daggers stabbing straight into my heart. Mom sat in the front seat, clutching the seat, murmuring, "He'll be okay, right, honey?" Dad didn't answer, just gripped the steering wheel tightly. I sat in the back, suffocating in a fear no one dared to name. The windshield wipers clicked steadily, but they couldn't wipe away the truth that was waiting at the end of the road. The riverbank that night was pitch black, the aggressive, swirling water swallowing the headlights. People in reflective gear were searching, safety ropes tied around them, but they looked like weak ghosts in the darkness. After 3 days, they only retrieved the mangled motorcycle, and Ben had vanished into thin air. On the third day, an officer approached, his voice as sharp as a knife. "The current is too strong. The chance of survival is 0. Mom collapsed, clinging to the last shred of hope like a person about to drown. "Number, my son is a good swimmer. Please." His words came out like a final blow, extinguishing everything. "Ma'am, he was severely injured before he fell. There was nothing anyone could have done." Mom broke down right there on the riverbank. Dad held her tight, but her sobs still shattered in the night. The funeral took place a week later. An empty coffin lay in the middle of the ceremony, a hollow and meaningless truth. Mom sat there, still as a statue. Dad stood beside her, silent. A few days later, I accidentally said Ben's name. The silence froze solid. Dad spun around, his eyes as cold as a blade. "Your brother is gone. Don't mention him again." That sentence slammed the door on our memories, turning the house into a cold graveyard where laughter had been buried. Mom became a soulless shadow, silently sinking into a dark room. Dad put on a facade of silence, building an invisible wall that separated us. They both chose to face their own grief, leaving me lost on that thin line, trying to hold on to the fragments of memories of Ben. Yet, every time I remembered him, I felt guilty as if I had betrayed my father's words. 3 years passed, the house like a silent cemetery. Then one morning, a strange light glimmered in the gloomy house. I saw Mom standing in front of the mirror, holding a vibrant red lipstick, a color I thought had died with Ben. She wore a floral dress, something I thought had been buried deep in the wardrobe. A small but bright glimmer of hope sparked within me. Maybe Mom was rediscovering herself. Maybe the pain had finally faded. But then I noticed something strange. Every Wednesday and Friday, Mom would dress up, put on makeup, and drive away. She would return when it was dark, looking tired in a way she couldn't hide. One day, I gathered all my courage and asked, "Where are you going, Mom?" She was taking off her shoes, her back to me. "Just meeting an old friend." She didn't look at me, her voice hollow like a long-practiced lie. An old friend. Mom didn't have many friends, and the ones I knew, she had cut ties with after the accident. Suspicion crept into me, sharp as a thorn. One Friday afternoon, I decided to act. I followed Mom's car, my heart pounding, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I felt like a traitor, stalking my own mother. But I had to know. Mom stopped at a small cafe in the old quarter. I parked on the other side of the street, hiding behind a tree. A man appeared, young, only a few years older than me, wearing a light-colored shirt and trousers. They sat by the window, talking intensely. At one point, Mom wiped away tears. The man handed her a tissue. I raised my phone and took a picture. The image was clear. Mom and a strange man. On the way home, my mind was as empty as a gust of wind. Dad sat in the living room, his eyes glued to the television, looking like a hollow, soulless shell. Mom, the person I thought had been consumed by grief, was secretly meeting someone else. I wanted to scream, to show him the photo, to tear this truth apart. But I couldn't. I ran to my room, locked the door, and buried the silence. I started to believe that Mom was having an affair, and Dad, who had lost everything, was about to be betrayed one more time. As Mom gradually regained her vitality, I saw Dad's health slowly decline. She put on red lipstick. He coughed at night. She wore a floral dress. He grew gaunt, like a withering tree. That chilling contrast made me unable to sit still any longer. One Friday afternoon, as soon as Mom left the house, I sneaked into her room. The floorboards creaked. Her perfume lingered in the air. I opened the wardrobe, my hand gliding over stacks of fabric, and touched something cold and hard at the bottom. A small glass vial, with a white label and tiny lettering. I ran back to my room, locked the door, my hands trembling as I took a picture of the pills and looked it up on the computer. The words that appeared were like cold daggers. A powerful sedative, only strictly prescribed. An overdose causes gradual heart failure. Difficult to detect in an autopsy. Everything became brutally clear. Mom, the pills, the strange man. Dad was slowly dying. Mom's resurrection wasn't a miracle, but a perfect plan for a flawless death. The floral dresses were a disguise for a new life. The Friday afternoons were for planning. The pills were the tool. Afterward, Mom would go to that man, a widow who had found new solace. Thinking of that, I was paralyzed. My love for Mom turned into a freezing rage, but a part of me still wondered, am I misunderstanding? Mom used to love Dad, used to love Ben. How could she do this? I couldn't confront Mom. She would deny it, play the victim. I had to start with that man. The photo in the cafe was the only clue. I knew where they met. For a whole week, I loitered around the cafe, waiting. Then on a Friday afternoon, he appeared, alone. When his car left the parking lot, I didn't follow. I just wrote down the license plate. I asked a friend who worked at a law office. 2 days later, she sent me a message. A name Alex and an address. The address wasn't a private home, but the Green Valley Rehabilitation Center in the suburbs. I planned to go there the next day, but that evening, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Hello? A man's voice, calm but tired. You were the person outside the cafe on Friday afternoon, weren't you? The girl driving the blue car? It was Alex. How did you get my number? Your mother gave it to me, he replied. She said you might find me. We need to talk. Tomorrow at 3 p.m., Central Park. I'll explain. At the park, Alex sat on a bench, a folder of documents beside him. He didn't beat around the bush. I'm not your mother's lover. I'm the one who found your brother 3 years ago. Alex pushed the folder toward me. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first page was a photo of Ben, lying in a hospital bed, his eyes vacant. The air was sucked out of my lungs. Alex looked straight at me. He's not dead, he said, his voice tearing through the gloomy fog. But he doesn't remember who you are. I clutched the folder, my mind spinning. Ben is alive? Why did Mom hide it? Why didn't Dad know? I wanted to scream, to cry, to run straight to Ben. But I just sat there, motionless, feeling like my whole world had collapsed all over again. I don't remember how I drove home. The road blurred before my eyes. Everything around me seemed to vanish. Only the folder on the passenger seat was clear, heavy with a secret waiting to explode. I walked into the house. Mom was in the kitchen, wiping a glass. She turned around and smiled. That smile, which I once thought was fake, now seemed to hide a bottomless abyss. I walked straight to the dining table, my hands shaking. I placed the folder down, gently but decisively. Ben's photo slid out, landing right in front of her. Mom's smile vanished. The glass in her hand dropped, shattering on the floor. The sharp sound cut through the silence between us. Alex told me, I whispered, my voice lost. Ben, he's alive. Mom took a step back, her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with panic. Not the panic of a criminal being exposed, but of someone whose plan had just crumbled. How? How did you know? She asked, her voice trembling. That question confirmed everything. Since when did you know? I pressed her, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom slumped down, her hands on the table to keep from falling. Just a few weeks ago, she said, almost a whisper. She looked up, her red-rimmed eyes filled with extreme fear. That's why you changed, I said, as if answering myself. The dresses, the lipstick. You weren't resurrecting. You were preparing to face Dad. To do what? To protect Ben, she replied, her voice choking, as if she was about to fall apart. I couldn't bring him back. If your father found out, he would hurt him again. I was stunned, feeling like the air had been sucked out. That sentence was sharper than the truth that Ben was alive. That accident. It wasn't random. It was your father, Mom said, each word like a knife. And I found the evidence. I was stunned, my mind spinning. Dad? The silent man? The one I thought had lost everything because of Ben? Impossible. Ben discovered your father embezzled a large sum of money, Mom continued, her voice flat, as if recounting a painful story. They argued in his office. I heard everything. She told me about that fateful night. Ben shouted that he would expose him. Dad yelled back, not letting Ben ruin everything. That night, Ben drove away and never came back. I was suspicious from the start, she said, so I went to the police impound lot and saw his mangled motorcycle. She led me to the basement and opened an old metal box. Inside was a stack of papers, the forensic report of the bike, which she had secretly requested from an old friend. She pointed to a line circled in red. The brake cable was cut. Deliberately. Everything inside me collapsed. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, but the evidence in front of me was undeniable. So why didn't you report it to the police? I asked, my voice trembling. Mom looked at me, her eyes full of pain. If I had, how would you live? The daughter of a murderer? How would people look at you? What about your future? She pointed to the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. The vial of pills I had found. That's why I did it, she said, her voice choking. I couldn't bring Ben back while he was still here. He would find a way to hurt him again. I used a sedative, just a small dose, just to make him weak so he couldn't cause harm, so that when Ben came back, he couldn't do anything. She looked at me, her eyes desperate. I just wanted him to face his guilt, in silence, for the rest of his life. I did all of this for Ben, and for you. Mom's words were like a knife. Didn't she see? She wanted to protect us, but she chose the wrong path, pushing the whole family into darkness. She wanted to save us from Dad, but her way would only destroy her. I couldn't let that happen. I had lost Ben once. I had just found him again. I wouldn't let Mom lose herself. I acted. Fast. Rushing past Mom, I stormed into the bathroom, opening the medicine cabinet. The sedative vial was there, behind the shampoo bottle. Mom ran after me, her voice panicked. What are you doing? I turned back, looking her straight in the eyes, and I threw the vial. It shattered on the tiled wall, brown liquid and glass shards spraying out. Mom's plan vanished in that moment. No! I screamed, releasing the anger I had suppressed for 3 years. Dad's way turned him into a wrongdoer. Your way will also destroy you. Mom was stunned. Then she slid down the wall, her body shaking with sobs. She was no longer the calculating mother, just an exhausted woman. I knelt down, looking at her. No longer angry, I only saw a mother who had tried her best, despite her mistakes. I hugged her. For the first time, I felt how small she was in my arms, as fragile as a leaf wrung dry by impossible choices. Let me, I whispered into her messy hair. I will confront Dad, but we will do it the right way. No secrets, no poison. I squeezed her tight. I will end this. I didn't know what I would say to Dad, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't let this secret continue to destroy the family. That night, I waited for Mom to go to sleep. Dad was sitting in the living room, under the dim yellow light. He looked 10 years older. I walked over, standing in front of him. Ben is alive, I said. Dad looked up. His eyes went from blank to skeptical, then to angry. What nonsense are you talking about? Do you know what you're saying? I didn't say anything more. I just placed Alex's folder on the table and flipped to the first page. The photo of Ben in the hospital bed, with his vacant eyes, appeared. His hand trembled as he touched the photo. He stared at my brother's unfamiliar face. Where? Where is this? How is he? He didn't finish the sentence, hope and fear tearing at his face. I placed another photo beside it, a close-up of a cut brake cable. This photo, I pointed to Ben, is the result of this photo? The wall of ice he had built for 3 years shattered into 100 pieces. He buried his head in his hands. For the first time, I heard him cry. A choked, broken cry. I just wanted to scare him, he whispered, his voice hoarse. So he would drop that foolish idea of reporting me, he told me, about hiring someone to loosen the brakes, about how it was just a warning, he repeated, as if trying to convince himself. I didn't think it would rain so heavily that night. The road was slick. He had lived in hell thinking he had killed his son. Tomorrow, I said, my voice as cold as ice. I'm bringing Ben home. He looked up, his old face wet with tears. And you, Dad? I looked him straight in the eye, without any pity. You have to go to the police station yourself. He didn't resist, he didn't beg. He just nodded, a slow, tired nod. In his eyes, I saw more than just regret. I saw relief. The liberation of a man who had carried the guilt of killing his son for 3 years, and now discovered he wasn't a murderer, just a coward. The next morning, there were no tears. Dad wore a clean shirt. Mom made him a cup of coffee. They looked like an old couple preparing for a long journey. A journey with no return. I drove. Mom sat in the passenger seat. Dad sat in the back. The silence in the car was heavier than the past 3 years combined. At the police station, Dad went in alone. Mom and I were taken to a different room. I placed everything on the table. Alex's folder, the photo of the cut brake cable, even the audio recording of Dad's confession that I had secretly recorded last night. Every piece of evidence was a pickaxe, digging the grave of my family deeper. In the afternoon, police cars arrived. Silent, but their red and blue lights danced on my house walls, a ghostly ballet. Neighbors gathered, their eyes like curious drills, trying to pierce through the walls of my home. 2 officers stepped inside. They read the arrest warrant. Dad didn't resist. He just held out his hands. As the cold metal handcuffs locked into place, Mom stood behind me. Her hand was icy, gripping mine tightly. This time, I was the one protecting her. The next day, my family's name was everywhere. Famous businessman harmed son over property dispute. They didn't know anything. They didn't know about the pain, the despair, the wrong choices. They only knew a sensational story. The shame burned on my cheeks, but the fear was gone. I had lived with a ghost for 3 years. Now, it had a name, a face, and a set of bars to contain it. The trial ended. A week later, I drove. Mom sat beside me. Alex led the way. The hallway of the rehabilitation center was long and sterile, white, cold. Each step was a beat in my chest. He stopped in front of a door. He knocked gently. The door opened. It was him. Ben. He was thinner. He had a faint scar on his forehead. But those eyes, they were still my brother's eyes. He looked at us. A strange, defensive look. He didn't recognize us. My heart felt like it was breaking. But Mom stepped forward. She didn't cry. She just raised her hand, her trembling finger touching his scar. "It's me, Ben," she whispered. "I've come to take you home. That touch. That voice." It was the key. The wall in his eyes crumbled. Memories flooded back like a broken dam. He looked at Mom, then at me. He burst into tears. The cry of a lost child who had finally found his way home. He rushed forward, hugging Mom tightly. Then he pulled me in, too. For the first time in 3 years, we were a family again. Even if there were only 3 of us, I brought him home. The house no longer had Dad, but it also no longer had lies. He didn't remember everything. There were still gaps. Sometimes, he would accidentally call me by the name of a nurse from the center. Each time that happened, my heart ached. But then, one evening, as Mom and I were fumbling in the kitchen, He walked in. He told a joke. An old, corny joke. And I laughed, his laugh. It wasn't boisterous like before. It was hesitant. But it was real. And I knew. The fireplace in my house had been lit again. It would never burn as brightly as before. But it was warm enough. Warm enough to heat the cracks that time would never be able to fill.